Standards Committee of the 5th of November. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded onto the Council's website. Just a quick reminder that on item 8, there is an Appendix 3, which is in a pink paper. Have a think about it. If you really do need to ask any questions on that, we'll obviously have to go into exempt, but if you don't, we can carry on. So, item 1, apologies for absence. We've received apologies from Councillor Cathy Kent this evening, who can't make the meeting, and Councillor Lee Watson is substituting for her. Are there any further apologies, Jenny? No. Okay. Item 2, the minutes. What page are they on? There we are. Page 5. Everyone agree with the minutes? Anyone got any problems with them? Or agreed? Yeah. Lovely. Item 3 is the urgent items of business. I have not agreed to any items of urgent business or been asked to. And item 4, declarations of interest. Does anyone wish to declare any interest at all? No? Okay. So we'll then go on to item 5, which is entitled Member Training and Development Update. Can I ask Helen Nichol to present this item, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. So this paper reports on the delivery and impact of training following the intervention. Its aim is to allow the Standards Committee the chance to express any views on the quality, type and approach to training. So what you've got within the report is a summary of all of that training that's been delivered so far during the 24-25 year, and the first recommendation is that you note the attendance figures and feedback provided for the session so far and make any recommendations that you wish in relation to increasing or improving engagement or delivery of sessions. The second recommendation seeks to secure member support to focus on the LGA Leadership Academy as a route to develop more experienced members in future years. The aim of the report is to demonstrate that training has been delivered in accordance with the Commissioner's wishes and to get member input, and that members through Standards Committee have further say and engagement with the ongoing development of training. So paragraph 2.1 of the report sets out the training delivered so far this year and the numbers of attendees, and you'll find at paragraph 2.2 a table of the feedback that has been received from those sessions delivered. Paragraph 2.4 sets out the training sessions that are still to be delivered for the rest of the year. And also you'll see at pages 19 and 20 of the report the training record for individual members. For the committees that require specific training, so namely planning and licensing committees, 8 of 9 members have undertaken requisite planning training, plus an additional 3 councillors are sufficiently trained to act as substitutes. And for licensing committee, 12 of 16 members are trained, plus 1 additional councillor sufficiently trained as a substitute. There's been various other activities ongoing to enhance the training offer, and these include the development of member profiles, member drop-in sessions, budget training in particular with reference to budget scrutiny, and also an internal audit review, which found that good progress had been made in respect of training. But in response to recommendations outlined in that internal audit, actions have been developed, and these are set out in the report for you. In relation to the LGA Leadership Academy, Councillor Maldoni is on the course for this year, with Councillors Hartstein and Morris Cook also attending, having been funded from money that the Chief Executive's Office have put aside. And last year, Councillors Worrell, Watson, Jeffries and D. Arnold attended the LGA Academy. We're also, this isn't in the report, but we're also starting the preparation work for member induction training post the May all-out elections next year, and have sought engagement with both group leaders and whips on what this could look like and what would be valuable for members attending. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Members, do you have any questions? Councillor Arnold?
Thank you. Thank you for the report. I just wondered, like, there are councillors that have done no training or councillors have done a little bit of training. Are you going to be talking to them about maybe the reasons behind why they're not engaging with training to sort of like build a picture there? I wanted to make the comment of, whilst I think overall the standard of training has definitely improved, I think there's still a gap for those that have done several terms. Some people are on their 3rd and 4th term as a councillor. Other than you've mentioned the LGA leadership course, but there's no real sort of intermediate or advanced training in specific subjects that are for Thurrock councillors, if you like. All of the training still seems to be aimed at new councillors, and I think that's why you tend to not get the engagement that perhaps you think you should, but it's because you've sat through the same thing a couple of times. You want a bit more bones, meat on the bones, I suppose is the word.
Yeah, absolutely. So with reference to the first question, yes, we are looking particularly through the member profiles at who is attending training and looking to have that engagement as to what are potentially the barriers to training being attended, or if potentially it's not the right training or members would like to see something different. And absolutely, in relation to the second point about training for those members who, like you say, are potentially on a multiple term, it would be really helpful actually to hear in some more detail from members what potentially you would like to see or what would be of value to you for those more experienced councillors. But absolutely, that's something that we can take away and look at.
Anyone else? Okay. Helen, I was going to mention something along the lines of what Councillor Arnold said anyway, that the LGA Academy, I think we should certainly make more use of it. I'm one of those councillors who's been here on and off since 2007, and I'm not going to hide it. The training, it's time. You spend a lot of time in meetings, and then to come along for training, individual training, 2 hours or whatever, it does take up a lot of your time. I'd really like us to look at, I think the LGA is a leadership academy at the minute, but I'm sure I'd much prefer to go to the LGA, up in Warwick, spend 7 or 8 hours there and do 2, 3, or maybe even 4 separate training, rather than coming in on night basis and have it here. That's something I'd really like us to look at. Obviously, you have to speak to the LGA as well, but rather than aiming it at the leadership side, to bring it all the way down. And I would think we'd probably fill that up with our own councillors, if it was a certain one night, in whenever, we'd all go there. I think we'd probably get a lot more people there. But I do agree with Councillor Arnold that, when you have done it for a long while, you do sit there and think, I've done this, I know it, do I really want to go and spend another 2 hours away from the family?
Of course, that's really valuable feedback. Thank you very much, and something we'll definitely take away. One of the things to note as well, we've also set up a group whips meeting. So again, this is something that perhaps we can have continued discussions about via the group whips as well.
If there's no more questions, sorry, Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Totally agree with Councillor Johnson, what he's just said. I've been on the LGA leadership course. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's hard work. You start at 8:30 in the morning and you won't be finishing till about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening. But it's more rewarding. The other thing as well is if we can make our training slightly more interactive and a little bit more excitable to go than just being talked to and going through slide after slide after slide. And then probably bring in the latest stuff that we should be knowing, especially as we're going through so much intervention right now and scrutiny training. That would be a really good idea to do that. And Councillor Johnson's right. I'd rather be on a Saturday course all day and walking around and gone than having to rush here from work and then sit here, and to be honest, sometimes I'm phased out completely and you just become a tick box exercise, which it should not be at all.
Councillor Fox. Councillor Watson, you've still got your mic on.
Good evening. As one of the new councillors here this year, I've found so far the training has been excellent and very, very informative. With what has been offered to us, it is well worth new councillors, and take on board what's been said, new councillors to attend as many sessions as they possibly can to understand what the process is.
Councillor Shinnick.
Yeah, I mean, going forward, I mean, I've been a councillor for quite a few years. Perhaps we could have some more intense training for existing councillors, you know, and then keep the new ones separate. Because I end up getting told I've got to go to the training, but I've done it about 4 times, you know. And I sit there and I think, I don't want to be, you know, you need to make it more attractive for councillors who've been here longer, I think.
I think, obviously it has improved. Everyone has said it, that our own officers giving training, but sometimes that's even difficult as well. When you're sitting here and, we're holding the officers to account, yet they're sitting here telling us how it should and shouldn't be done. So, sometimes it might be easier to have other officers, or LGA members, should we say, giving us this training. That's my own personal thought on it.
Chair, if I could just come back on a couple of those points. So with reference to the request that training is more interactive, I mean, certainly that's something that we are looking at, particularly for the member induction next year and how we can make it engaging, what practical scenarios that we can provide so that members are then thinking about the training that's been given but applying it in a practical situation so that it is more two-way rather than just a slide deck that you are spoken to about. And also, Councillor Johnson, in relation to office training versus potential external training providers as well. Again, that is something that we're actively considering to make sure we get that balance right.
Thank you, Helen. Anyone else? No? In that case, then, we'll go to the recommendations. I reckon we're on page 9, recommendation 1.1. Note the attendance figures and feedback provided for sessions so far and make any recommendations in relation to increasing or improving engagement or delivery of sessions. I think we've done that, haven't we? Do you note that? 1.2, the committee support the drafting of a schedule of attendees for the experienced members to attend the LGA Leadership Academy in future years, and this schedule should be cross-party. Agreed on those? Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, item 6, update on review of councillor conduct sections of the Constitution. Can I ask Helen to present this item, please?
Thank you. So, as set out in the report, there is a review of the Constitution ongoing at the moment, and that's been led by Dan Fennick, the Monitoring Officer, and myself. At the moment, the current Chapter 7 of the Constitution is the Ethical Governance Framework. And in terms of the proposals that we're making around the Constitution review, the current Member Code of Conduct follows the LGA standard model. And we're not proposing any change to that because it is in line with that LGA model. And we're requesting that Standards Committee endorse that as an approach. But the proposal is to, in the review, simplify the structure of the ethical framework section of the Constitution so that there is that Member Code of Conduct. There's then the process or procedure for complaints that are made under that Code of Conduct, and then protocols and guidance sitting behind that to assist councillors and officers, for example, on topics such as social media engagement, gifts and hospitality, etc. And we're planning to bring a report to the next Standards Committee that will have the revised chapter regarding the procedure attached. But in the meantime, we recognise that the procedure is quite difficult to follow through. And so what officers have done is prepare Appendix 1, a table of the complaints process, which we hope will be a useful guide, again, to both councillors and to officers. So it sets out each stage of the process, the questions that will be asked and what is being considered at each stage, and also the timescales within which those complaints will be considered, because certainly there has been feedback previously that the complaints can take quite a long time to work through. So it's intended to give a quick view of the process and to increase efficiency. And if members are minded to agree to that table as Appendix 1 tonight, then the monitoring officer can exercise their powers and introduce it into the Constitution as a consequential amendment at this stage, and hopefully, pending the full review, hopefully that table can then be a useful guide. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Arnold?
Thank you. It's more a comment, I suppose, and then a question. On page 24, 7.1, It says the Code of Conduct promotes and encourages good conduct and safeguards the public's trust and confidence in the role of councillors. And then if you go to page 28, where it says we publish the findings of the conduct, I kind of think, not when they're on pink, how are we growing the public's trust and being open and transparent? I don't think there's a councillor in the chamber that hasn't at some point talked about wanting more openness and honesty and trust. And yet here we are publishing on pink and hiding councillors' conduct in pink sections and confidential bits of reports when things are going wrong. So I just wondered if there's still a bit to be done around being more open and transparent there.
Helen?
I think and the reason for that, which is standard in most councils, is that the allegations listed in the pink papers are at that stage. They're allegations, they haven't been proven, and therefore the balance of public access versus protecting the privacy of both the councillor and the person making the allegation and or any other persons involved in that is in the interest of maintaining that confidentiality. Obviously, if a matter were to be investigated and go to a hearing of the Standards Committee, that hearing is by default in public, subject to the committee deciding to hear it in private session, and any outcome of that hearing is also made public. But at this stage, what you have in front of you are allegations about councillors and or cases that have been closed where no further action has been taken.
Yeah, I do take your point there on allegations, but even when we've been at a hearing process where it was confirmed a particular councillor, and in other cases that it's upheld, but it's still a restricted document that gets published, isn't it? It's not the whole hearing or the whole of the findings. It's kind of like a summary of it. And I don't know. I mean, we've got two members of what I consider to be the public voice here. Maybe it's what their thoughts are on that, but it doesn't feel as open and as transparent as it could be to me. But that's just me.
Well, I mean, all I can say is, I mean, obviously I wasn't here, neither of us were here at the time of those hearings, but we will take those comments on board when we're looking at the process to make sure that it's a real balance between the transparency, openness, fully accept that, and respecting the privacy. And sometimes it is the privacy of residents, as you can probably see from the table, which obviously we're not going to discuss. Some of these people are residents, and there may be a kind of fear factor if they knew that at this stage that material was going to go into the public domain. But it's always a balancing act, so fully take on board what is said, and we will address that as when reviewing the process.
Anyone else? Yep.
Thank you for Appendix 1. I think that's quite useful, seeing it in that format. My main question is around the speed of process. That still feels like quite a lengthy process, especially the investigation part being 2 months from the appointment of an investigating officer, which could be quite vague and extend that timeline.
I think the 2 months is given because it may be that we have to appoint an external investigator, or it could potentially be an internal investigator that completes that, but that's when the detailed evidence will be taken. The initial assessment stage isn't intended to be a full analysis of the of all of the matters. It might be a case that there has to be various meetings with individuals involved, certainly with the complainant and with the subject member of the complaint, but there might be additional witness evidence that needs to be taken. There might be a significant volume of documents depending on the nature of the matter to review. So clearly, obviously, if investigations can be completed quicker, then they will be, but I think that time frame is built in so that there is sufficient time to do that proper investigation prior to it going to a panel hearing.
Councillor Watson? Sorry, Councillor Arnold.
We look alike. We've both got blonde hair. That's what it is. Yeah, it was talking about the timescale there. I was wondering whether there should be a point in there about how many times you try to set a meeting, because I know there can be lots of delays and lengthening of the timescale where you can't fit that particular face-to-face or Teams meet with someone to get that information from, and the dates can keep moving and changing. Are you going to sort of build a limit into there and say, right, we've tried so many times, we haven't been able to engage with you, we're going to do the process without? I don't know what you can do.
No, absolutely. And I think that will sit in, rather than in the table, which is intended to be a quick view of the process, absolutely sitting in the procedure or the process that we're going to be looking at as part of the Constitution review. And like I say, bringing to the next Standards Committee meeting, that's absolutely something that we can pick up as to what, you know, the more detailed nature of that process, how many times you might try to engage if there were challenges, for example, and when that cut-off lies, and when you take that view that, well, no, we're just going to have to undertake the investigation on the information that's available if there hasn't been engagement.
Yes, please.
Just to add to the points that have been made already, is there any merit in having a maximum cutoff time from date of complaint to completion without it going past that date? Because it seems to me that it's taking 4 to 5 months to get a complaint through the process, or it could take, based on this timeline, which at some point, one circumstance might have dictated otherwise, that the complaint's no longer going to be followed up because it's taken so much time, or the parties involved are no longer in office or something else. So it doesn't make much public openness if it drags on for too long. So is there a set time that can be put in there that it will only take so long, and subject to that, the process needs to be followed through?
There isn't at the moment, but absolutely, I think that's something that we can take away when we're looking at the process in more detail, when we're doing the Constitution review. Absolutely, we'll pick up those points as part of it. And if there is then that sort of backstop date, for want of a better phrase, as to when it has to be completed by, then obviously the table can be amended accordingly to reflect the new process. What I will say is that there usually needs to be a little bit of flexibility within those timescales, because if further information comes to light, or there is, you know, difficulty potentially engagement, or finding times at which meetings can take place at, then there might need to be a bit of flexibility within that in terms of that balance. But absolutely, that is something that we'll consider in the review.
Okay, maybe I could just a couple of points from me. I have no problem with allegations being in pink paper. I think that's the right way to do it. But if it is referred to the members' advisory panel, and you know, they have a hearing, I also have no problem in them holding that hearing in, you know, not in public. That's fine. But if a councillor is found to have breached the code of conduct, I don't think that committee should have the power to say what should happen. You know, it should come back to full council to be discussed. That's how I feel. I don't know about anybody else, but you know, I think an MAP sit in, find someone guilty, and then, you know, just say simply, "Oh no, just we've got to do is write a letter of apology." I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's right, because there's no deterrent. Councillors, you know, they could have their friends up here, you know, sit on the MAP. It's not, for me. I think that advisory panel shouldn't have that power. I don't know if anyone agrees or disagrees with me. Sorry, that's just my own personal opinion.
And if I can come in there. And we obviously can look at that. It would be unusual to bring something back to full council, and obviously from the point of view of fairness on both sides, is the panel is the only body that would have heard all of the evidence to make the decision. I think what you do identify also, though, is that currently the code of conduct is toothless in terms of having any sanctions that can be imposed beyond, and this, you know, in colloquial terms, a slap on the wrists. And that is common to all councils for the past 13 years. since sanctions were taken away. But I think members do identify something that is probably one of the greatest sanctions, which is the oxygen of publicity, and ensuring that if there is a finding of a breach of the code of conduct, that we are clear that that will be published in as much detail as is possible. And that can, I mean, it is an option for then that to be referred to full council, and one of the sanctions that can be imposed is a censure by full council of the member for the breach of the code of conduct. So we can look at those options, but you know, we are like all councils have our hands tied by the fact that there is no formal sanction under the statutory code.
You say it would be unusual for that to happen. I mean, it's unusual for councillors to be found guilty of breaching the code of conduct, I hope. But, you know, what I'm saying is you bring it back to full council, and you said that the MAP are the only committee that have seen the full evidence. Well, quite often full council is asked to make a decision on what's written in one of these papers. So I don't agree with that. I think the evidence that the MAP have found and put in writing should be discussed at full council. But as I say, once again, that is just my own personal opinion. Councillor Watson?
Thank you. I respect your opinion, but I disagree with that. The whole panel is, if you look at a court and a judge and the jury, it doesn't go out onto mainstream TV, and it's not done anything else unless you're in Jerry Springer, but we're not. And so those people that I like to think that we have put our wholeheartedly respect into those people, and we trust them with the Nolan principles to do the right thing. So the chair will be there, and they will have all the evidence, they will ask all the questions, and some of the things that will probably come out probably shouldn't be out in the public domain, because you don't know what's following or what's happened before and how that can impact on somebody else. I mean, and we're not a judge, we're not a jury. You know, we go forward, we're doing the monitoring office, like we go to the monitoring office and we're doing all the standard stuff. But I don't think that some staff is not fair, especially if there is a resident involved in that. You don't want to publicly go out and start saying about what the resident does, but the panel will know that. So I think there's a little bit about, let's have a bit of trust in the chair. The chair should be trained correctly. The panel should be trained correctly. The lawyers are sitting in there, like Helen and Dan, guiding them on their way. And then they come back to full council as part of the process that we know this has happened. And we go from there.
Councillor Arnold?
I don't find myself disagreeing with either yourself or Councillor Watson there, actually, as you kind of like come around the argument. What I would say, though, is should we be thinking about a chair that doesn't come from either party or from the chamber, that it's an external chair that chairs the hearing? Because some of that, I think, is born from, you know, the party involved in the room. I think maybe there should be somebody external coming in to actually chair our hearings.
Dan, do you want to come back, or Helen? Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I have seen that done. You have an independent chair. It could be and you obviously got independent members here. However, under the statutory regime, there could only be a non-voting member of the panel. So so you'd have a chair who may chair independently, but they wouldn't have a say in the outcome.
Councillor Watson?
To be honest, Dan, I probably prefer that. It's about being impartial, unbiased, and just listens to and be able to lead and be able to give the advice that needs to be. It's not necessarily about voting for it. That's completely what a jury does. They vote, not the judge. And so I think that would probably be better. And across parties, we probably feel a little bit more calm about it. I mean, to ask the question, how many panels are actually set up a year? Probably not many.
Yeah, I mean, we can look at that. As I say, I've seen it done. I think it for the reasons you say, it kind of deflects away from, well, that person's bound to be against me or bound to be for them, and that goes back to your transparency point from earlier. But obviously just with that current caveat that they wouldn't be able to vote on the outcome. But, you know, we can certainly look at that. We've obviously got to be able to find an independent chair, but we'll be up to that.
Are we done? Yeah? We'll find one somewhere, I'm sure. Okay, if we're done there, then perhaps we can go to the recommendations. Recommendation on page 29, 1.1. Agree the guidance note of the monitoring officer in relation to the exclusion or disclosure of sensitive member interests relating to members' employment. Am I on the wrong one? Yes. It's item 6. I don't know why I turned over. Sorry. Oh, that's right, because I was looking at that page. I do beg your pardon. Yep. So recommendations are 2.1. Consider and agree the proposal not to amend the Council's Code of Conduct. We agree on that one? 2.2, to note the comments in respect of the Code of Conduct complaints procedure and agree to receive a report at the next meeting for consultation. And 2.3, agree the complaint process table as set out in Appendix 1, which the monitoring officer will adopt into the current constitution, pursuant to his powers to do so, in advance of the constitution review to assist with clarity on processing complaints. Do we agree? Thank you. That's agreed.
Sorry, Chair, I just wanted to ask where we're going to put in about the having an independent chair or changing the process and that within the recommendations or notes.
Dan?
If I can come back on that one, we've taken a note of it. We're going to be doing the review of the procedure, and that will come within the procedure points, and we're going to bring that back to the next standards committee, so we'll make sure that we pick it up in that. I'm not sure that it requires a recommendation.
In that case, we move on to item 7, sensitive members' interest. Can I ask Helen to present the item, please?
Sorry, councillors, you're hearing a lot from me this evening. This is a report that attaches at Appendix 1 a guidance note from the monitoring officer. It relates to the disclosure by members of their employment office, trade, professional vocation, which they're required to disclose as part of their declaration of interests. Section 32 of the Localism Act 2011 allows for details of a councillor's register of interest to be excluded if it's deemed by the officer and the monitoring officer that it could lead to violence or intimidation. So the current position at Thurrock is that the employment office, trade, professional vocation of members is not disclosed, and in the public register a declaration is included setting out the Section 32 wording. So in the guidance note at Appendix 1, the main principles that are being proposed are that councillors will still have to register their employment information as they're required to do as part of their declaration of interest, but these will not be published, and the register of interest will state that there's reasonable cause that details should not be published or displayed. And then also that any councillor can notify the monitoring officer in writing that they do not wish their employment information to be treated as a sensitive interest, in which case it will be published. So we're requesting here that the committee agree the guidance note, and if so agreed, it will then be published on the website and also will be circulated to all members for information.
Thanks, Helen. Any questions? No, none from me either. I think that's quite straightforward, so to go straight to the recommendations. 1.1, we agree the guidance note of the monitoring officer in relation to the exclusion or disclosure of sensitive members' interests relating to members' employment office, trade, profession or vocation as set out in Appendix 1. And if agreed, the guidance note is published on the Council's website to strengthen transparency, and all members are written to by the monitoring officer to make them aware of the guidance. Are we agree with that? Councillor Watson?
Sorry, can I just ask, does this also include like individuals' addresses? Sorry.
A paper was brought to the last standards committee which dealt with sensitive interests with regard to councillors' addresses, and a similar principle was taken.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So in that case, do we agree with the recommendations? Yep. Thank you very much. Okay. Item 8, ethical framework update. Now, we'll move on to item 8, the ethical framework update. As I said, Appendix 3, there is some pink papers, so if anyone wants to ask any questions on that, please let us know first, and we'll have to go into exempt. Okay, over to you again.
Thank you. So this is a report that is a standing item that comes to Standards Committee, and it looks at gifts and hospitality, declarations of interest that have been made in meetings, and also code of conduct complaints that have been received and concluded during the period from the last meeting. So the relevant period that's been considered by committee in this report is 16th of July 2024, which is the day after the last meeting, to the 27th of October 2024, which was the date of publication of these papers. Members are asked to note and make any comment on the records on each of those individual items. So referring to Appendix 1, which sets out the gifts and hospitality that have been declared since the last meeting, there's been no such gifts or hospitality declared. At Appendix 2, again, there's been no declarations of interest at meetings since the last meeting of Standards Committee. However, we have noted in the report that there was a declaration at People Overview and Scrutiny Committee, but this was in fact an appointment to an outside body that had been made by full council, and as such did not need to be recorded as a declaration of interest, but it's included within the body of this report just for completeness. Then with regard to Appendix 3, as the Chair has said, that is an exempt item because of the sensitive information that it contains. But speaking about that more generally, officers have listened to and considered feedback that was given by committee at the last meeting regarding the form and content of the table, and have included more detail on whether matters have been opened or closed during the relevant period. And we hope that is of use to members who are considering the table, but welcome any further comments about the format. Thank you.
Members, any questions? Councillor Arnold?
Sorry, I have questions, but in the pink section.
In the pink
so-
section, okay, so we'll wait for any questions in this. So do we close it down now, Jenny? Yes, please. Okay, we're now back into open session, and as I don't think there are any further questions on item 8, shall we go straight to recommendations? They are 1.1, note and provide any comment on the register of gifts and hospitality at Appendix 1. 1.2, note and provide any comment on the register of declarations of interest at Appendix 2. Note and provide any comment on code of conduct complaints received and concluded during the period as set out in the exempt Appendix 3. I think we've done all that. Do you agree with all three of those, please? Yes, thank you. Item 9 is the work programme. I'm told the Constitution Review Ethical Governance will be added to the February meeting, but do members have any further questions? It's on page 47, I think. Yeah. Councillor Arnold.
Sorry, it's just a comment more than anything that this is very officer-led, and now I know it's standards and it's all about the governance, and I get that, but there is something about, we're not really a scrutiny committee either, I know, but is there nothing that we as members think we should be bringing forward?
It's a good question, and I do think this is one that is more officer-led than anything else. And we tend to question what the officers say as to whether we think it's right or wrong. And I think we've had disagreements here between us. I think what's coming through on the work programme is okay for me.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not disagreeing with the work programme. It was a comment more than anything of whether we should be thinking about that ourselves more.
I think that, I mean, if we have got something specific, we can bring it onto the work programme. But personally, I can't think of anything at the minute. Councillor Watson, surely you can. Sorry, Caroline.
Sorry, just in response to that, but absolutely yes, if there are items that members would like to see coming forward, then absolutely we're happy to hear from you as to what those are. And particularly, I know that this committee's been wanting to look particularly at the culture and the culture change that's required. So again, if there's anything that you have insight into that would be helpful for an item to be brought to Standards Committee, then absolutely we can work with you on that.
Everyone happy? Okay. I think that brings us to the close of business. No, sorry, carry on, sorry.
I think Helen commented that at the next meeting they were going to bring back the Constitution and Code of Conduct review. Where would that fall under?
Sorry, yes, so it hasn't been added to the work programmes yet, but I think as the Chair said when he introduced it, it's going to be added, so it will be coming back to the February meeting.
Going once, going twice. That seems to be the close of business, so we conclude the meeting at 19:49. Thank you all very much for your assistance.